Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to add and subtract algebraic fractions. And just like regular fractions, of course the goal is you want to have a least common denominator between both of your terms. In this case we already got it. Our least common denominator is 12. We can just proceed to add these. You have x over 12 plus 3x over 12. Since both have the same denominator, we can go ahead and add it. So x plus 3x, well, that would give you 4x over 12. But this can be simplified because between 4 and 12, there's a common factor of 4. If you divide out the 4 from 4x, you just get 1. Divide out the 12 by 4, you get 3. So what you're left with in the end is x over 3. And that would be your answer, would be x over 3. And I do have more examples here. Alright, how about 7x over 15 minus 4x over 15. Alright, so 7x over 15 minus 4x over 15. Well, we got the same denominator, so that all works out. You can go ahead and do the subtraction. So 7x minus 4x, well, that's going to be 3x over 15, but we can sure simplify this further because between the 3 and the 15 there's a common factor of 3. Divide 3x by 3, you're down to 1x. Divide 15 by 3, you have 5. So what you should be left with is x over 5. That would be your answer, would be x over 5. Alright. Let's see. Now we have 2 over n minus 6 over n. Well, they both still have the same common denominator, so we can go ahead and proceed with the subtraction. 2 minus 6, that's negative 4 all over n. And that's as much as we can do with it. We can't simplify this any further. You end up getting negative 4 over n. Alright, let's see. We got 5 over 3x plus 9 over 3x. So, what we're going to do, we have the same denominator, 3x. Just go ahead and add these up. 5 plus 9, that's 14 over your denominator of 3x. And this doesn't factor any further, so what you should get is 14 over 3x. Alright, let's see. We have 2x over 3 minus x minus 1 over 3. So, we still have the same denominator of 3, so we can go ahead and do the subtraction. I'm going to write it out here. You're going to do 2x minus that quantity of x minus 1 in the second numerator all over your denominator of 3, which when you simplify this you would get 2x minus x, then minus minus 1, that's actually plus 1 all over 3. Well, let's do the math a little further. 2x minus x, that's just x, then you have plus 1. So you should get x plus 1 over 3 as your final answer. That would be x plus 1. we have x all over x minus 2 plus 1 all over x minus 2. Well, you have the same denominator of x minus 2, so you can go ahead and add the two numerators. You would just get x plus 1 all over x minus 2, and that's really all you can do with it. It doesn't factor any further. So you get x plus 1 all over x minus 2. All right, now how about this? We have 3 all over x minus 5 plus 2 all over 5 minus x. All of a sudden that changes because, well, we technically have a different denominator. They look almost the same, but 5 minus x, is that not just the negative of x minus 5? What we can do here, you'll keep your 3 over x minus 5, plus you'll have 2. Now if you factor out a negative 1, you would get negative 5 plus x. So then negative 1 times negative 5, that's positive 5. The negative 1 times x, well, that's negative x. Well, that negative 1, we can go ahead and move that to the numerator, right? Because we don't want to have a negative in the denominator. What you would end up getting is 3 over x minus 5 minus, you'll have 2 all over, that negative 5 plus x is the same as x minus 5. Now we have the same denominator of x minus 5 on both terms. We can do the subtraction. 3 minus 2, well, that's just going to be 1 all over x minus 5. And that would be your final answer. We can't simplify it any further. You get 1 over x minus 5. Alright, similar one. We have 5 over 4y minus 1 minus 3 all over 1 minus 4y. Okay, denominators look similar, but they're technically different. Well, isn't 1 minus 4y, isn't that just the negative of 4y minus 1? So we can factor out a negative 1 from the 1 minus 4y. What you'll have is 5 over 4y minus 1 minus 3 all over, you'll have a negative 1 times, then you would have negative 1 plus 4y. And if you distribute that negative 1, you end up getting 1 minus 4y. So that works. Now we can move that negative to the numerator instead of the denominator. If you put the negative up here, that would actually turn it into a positive 3 in the numerator. You would end up having 5 over 4y minus 1 plus 3 all over, well, negative 1 plus 4y, that's 4y minus 1. You now have the same denominator. You can go ahead and add these. 5 plus 3, well, that's 8 all over 4y minus 1. So your final answer should be 8 over 4y minus 1, and there's really nothing else we can do with that. Alright. Now it's a little bit different. We have 2 over x plus 3 over x squared. Alright. Well, all of a sudden now we have different denominators. We need to figure out the least common denominator between x and x squared. Well, it definitely looks like x squared would be your least common denominator. The least common denominator would actually end up being x squared. In order to make the first term have a denominator of x squared, you're going to have 2 over, let's see, x times x equals x squared, but what you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. You'd end up having 2 times x. So you have 2 times x over x times x plus 3 over x squared. Which, when we do this, you would end up having 2x over x squared plus 3 over x squared. Now that we have the same denominator, you can go ahead and add these. So you have 2x over x squared plus 3 over x squared. That should give you an answer of 2x plus 3 all over x squared. That would be your final answer, would be 2x plus 3 all over x squared. Alright, we have 8 over AB minus 6 over AB to the second. Alright, so 8 over AB minus 6 over AB to the second. Well, we need to find the least common denominator between AB and AB to the second. I would definitely say AB to the second is your least common denominator. So, in order to make AB turn into AB to the second, we got to take that denominator, multiply that by B, but what you do to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. You'll end up having 8 times B, then all that minus 6 over AB to the second. Well, when we do the math here, 8 times B, that's 8B, all over AB to the second, minus 6, all over AB to the second. Well, now we have the same denominator between both terms, the AB to the second. You can do the subtraction now. You'll end up having 8B minus 6 all over AB to the second. And it doesn't factor any further. If you want to get technical, you could factor out a 2 between the 8B and the 6, but you'll just end up, the 2 doesn't factor any further with AB squared. There's really no point in factoring the numerator any further. Nothing further is going to come out of this and factor, so you can leave it as 8B minus 6 over AB squared. That would be perfectly acceptable. Only go through the extra steps if you know you can factor further. Alright. 1 over 2x to the second minus 5 all over 4x. Okay, so we have 2 different denominators again. Well, we need to find the least common denominator between 2x squared and 4x. I would say that's going to be 4x squared. That would be your least common denominator. So, to turn 2x squared into 4x squared, we need to multiply the denominator of 2x squared by 2. But what you do to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. You'll take that 1 and multiply it by 2. Minus, okay, we want to turn that 4x into 4x squared. Well, we got to multiply that 4x by x in order to do that. But what you do to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. You would take that 5 and multiply it by x. Okay. Now let's do the math here. 1 times 2, that's 2. All over 2x squared times 2, that's 4x squared. Minus, we have 5 times x, well that's 5x. Over 4x times x, that'd be 4x squared. Now we have 2 over 4x squared minus 5x over 4x squared. We have the same denominator. We can go ahead and do the subtraction. 2 minus 5x is going to be just that. 2 minus 5x over that denominator of 4x squared. And we can't factor this any further, so the answer you should get is 2 minus 5x over 4x squared. Alright, let's see. We have 4 over 3xy plus 3 over 2x squared. Well, we need to find our least common denominator. The least common denominator, let's see. Let's start with the coefficients, 3 and 2. The least common denominator you can get from that would be 6, right? 6 would be for your coefficient. Now between x and x squared, the least common denominator would be x squared. And then you just have a y, you got to include the y. So the least common denominator for this is going to be 6x squared y. Well, we need to turn first that 3xy into 6x squared y. So, take your 3xy times, okay. To turn 3 into 6, we got to multiply by 2. To turn x into x squared, we got to multiply by x. We already have the y, so we don't got to do anything with that. But what you do to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. So you'll take that 4, you'll multiply that by 2x. Alright, plus now, to turn the 2x squared, let's see. So to turn 2 into 6, take that 2x squared, you got to multiply by 3. X squared's already there. We don't got to do anything with that, but we need a y. You also have to multiply by y. So, you'll have to take your numerator of 3, multiply that by 3y. And now we just do the math here. 4 times 2x, well that's 8x. Over your denominator, 3 times 2, that's 6. X times x, that's x squared. Then times y. So you have 8x over 6x squared y plus, you have 3 times 3y, well that's 9y, over 2 times 3, that's 6, then you got the x squared and the y. So now all of a sudden we have the same denominator on both terms. You have 8x over 6x squared y plus 9y over 6x squared y. We can proceed now to do the addition since we have the same denominator, which would give you 8x plus 9y over 6x squared y. And we cannot factor this any further, so you get 8x plus 9y over 6x squared y. Let's keep that least common denominator one up there. Whoops, did I bump that again? Yeah, I did. Oh well. Alright, we have 4 over 5 times x plus 1 plus x all over x plus 1. Well, two different denominators. We have 5 times x plus 1, then we have x plus 1. It should be pretty apparent your least common denominator should end up being 5 times x plus 1. So, for the first term, we already have it. We have 4 all over 5 times x plus 1. Plus now, we need to make x plus 1 5 times x plus 1. You're just going to multiply that by 5. You would get 5 times x plus 1, which means you got to multiply the numerator of x by 5. That would give you 5x. Now we have the same denominator of 5 times x plus 1. We can go ahead and add these up. You would end up getting 4 plus 5x all over 5 times x plus 1. And these don't factor any further, so there's your answer. You get 4 plus 5x all over 5 times x plus 1. Alright, let's move on to some other ones here. We have 1 all over x minus 1 plus 1 all over x. So we got 1 all over x minus 1 plus 1 all over x. Well, two different denominators. So I would think it's safe to say our least common denominator is going to be x times x minus 1. That would be our least common denominator. It would be x times x minus 1. So, in order to make x minus 1 x times x minus 1, we just got to multiply the denominator by x. You would end up getting your x times x minus 1. But that means you got to multiply your 1 by x. You would end up getting x plus, now you need to make your denominator of x to be x times x minus 1. Well, you just have to multiply times x minus 1. If you take your 1 and multiply by x minus 1, you'll get x minus 1. Now we have the same denominator of x times x minus 1. We can go ahead and do the addition. X plus x minus 1, that's going to be 2x minus 1 all over x times x minus 1. And really, that's all we can do with it. We can't factor this any further, so you should get 2x minus 1 over x times x minus 1. Alright, let's see. We have 3 over y minus 6 minus 1 over y. Alright, so 3 over y minus 6 minus 1 over y. Well, we need to get a least common denominator between y minus 6 and y. I would say that's going to be y times y minus 6. That would be your least common denominator. Y times y minus 6. Okay. So now, in order to make, for the first term, y minus 6 become y times y minus 6, we got to multiply the y minus 6 times y. Well, that would give you y times y minus 6, which means you got to multiply the numerator of 3 times y. Well, you would get 3y minus, okay, we want to turn that denominator of y into y minus 6. Well, you just multiply times y minus 6 and you get just that. Y times y minus 6, which means you got to multiply that 1 times y minus 6. You'll get just that, y minus 6. Now we have the same denominator of y times y minus 6. We can go ahead and do the subtraction. You would get 3y minus the quantity of y minus 6 all over y times y minus 6. Which, when we do that math, 3y minus y, that's 2y. Then minus minus 6, that's actually plus 6 all over y times y minus 6. And really, this won't factor any further. You'll end up getting 2y plus 6 all over y times y minus 6 as your final answer. Alright, let's see. We have 2 over x minus 3 plus 4 all over x plus 3. Alright, so 2 over x minus 3 plus 4 all over x plus 3. Well, we have two different denominators. We need to get a least common denominator. X minus 3 and x plus 3. You're just going to take the two and multiply them together. You'll end up getting x minus 3 times x plus 3 as your least common denominator. So, in order to turn the denominator of x minus 3 into x minus 3 times x plus 3, we got to take that denominator of x minus 3, multiply it times x plus 3. But we also got to do that to the numerator. You would take that 2, multiply it times x plus 3, plus, now we need to take that denominator of x plus 3, turn it into x minus 3 times x plus 3. Well, just multiply it by x minus 3 and you'll get that. So now you're just going to take your numerator 4, multiply it times x minus 3. And now that we have the same denominator of x minus 3 times x plus 3 on both terms, we can do the addition. But first, let's do a little distributive property. 2 times x, well, that's 2x, plus 2 times 3, that's 6, plus you have 4 times x, well, that's going to be 6x. Then you have 4 times negative 3, well, that's minus 12. All over, you have the quantity of x minus 3 times x plus 3, which, when you do the math a little further, 2x plus 6x, that's going to be 8x. Then you got 6 minus 12, well, that's minus 6. That'd be all over x minus 3 times x plus 3. And this doesn't factor any further, so you'll end up getting 8x minus 6 all over the quantity of x minus 3 times x plus 3. Alright. We have x all over x squared minus 1 plus 4 all over x plus 1. Well, okay, yes, we have two different denominators, but isn't x plus 1 already a factor of x squared minus 1? Let's go ahead and factor that first denominator. You'll end up having x all over x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 1. You would have that plus 4 all over x plus 1. Well, now all of a sudden it becomes clear. You need to find the least common denominator between the x plus 1 and x minus 1, and then the x plus 1. Well, I think that's a no-brainer. Your least common denominator is going to be x plus 1 times x minus 1. So, your first term, x all over x plus 1 times x minus 1, that's already got the least common denominator. We can leave that alone. You'll have x all over x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 1 plus, alright, now we need to take that x plus 1, turn it into the least common denominator. We need to multiply it by x minus 1. But what you do to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. So you'll take that 4, multiply that by x minus 1. Okay, now that we have the same common denominator, we can go ahead and do the math. You end up having x plus, you got 4 times x, well that's 4x. Then you have 4 times negative 1, that's negative 4. All over x plus 1 times x minus 1, which we simplify this further, x plus 4x, well that's 5x. Then you have minus 4 all over x plus 1 times x minus 1. And this won't simplify any further, so the answer you should get is 5x minus 4 all over x plus 1 times x minus 1. Alright, let's see. 2y over y squared minus 25 minus y all over y minus 5. Well, we have two different denominators again. You have y squared minus 25 and just y minus 5. Well, isn't it true that y minus 5 is a factor of y squared minus 25? Let's go ahead and factor y squared minus 25. You would get y plus 5 times the quantity of y minus 5. Well, let's see, you'll still have that 2y in the numerator. Then you have minus y all over y minus 5. Okay, well we have two different denominators, but I think it's plain to see in this case your least common denominator should be y plus 5 times y minus 5. That would be your least common denominator. So the first term already has it. We have 2y all over the quantity of y plus 5 times the quantity of y minus 5. Now, for the second term, that y minus 5, we need to multiply it by y plus 5. So we're going to go ahead and do just that. You'll have y plus 5 times y minus 5. So that means we need to take that y in the numerator, multiply that times y plus 5. So now that we have the same common denominator between both terms, we can go ahead and do the math. You'll have 2y. You have negative y times y, that'd be minus y squared. Negative y times positive 5, that'd be minus 5y. This would be all over y plus 5 times y minus 5. Which, when we simplify it one more time, 2y minus 5y, that's negative 3y minus y squared all over y plus 5 times y minus 5. And this will not simplify any further, so that's your final answer. It's going to be negative 3y minus y squared all over y plus 5 times y minus 5. Alright, let's see here. We have x minus 11 over x squared minus 9 minus, then we have x minus 7 all over x squared minus 3x. Alright, so we have x minus 11 over x squared minus 9 minus x minus 7 over x squared minus 3x. First thing I would do, factor your denominators. Make your life easier. So you'll have x minus 11 over the factorization of x squared minus 9. That would be x plus 3 times x minus 3. Minus, you have x minus 7 all over the factorization of x squared minus 3x. That would give you x times x minus 3. Alright, so we still have two different denominators, but it's factored out. Should make your life a little easier. So, what we have to do here, we have to come up with the least common denominator. Well, they both have an x minus 3 in common. That much they have going for them. But the first term doesn't just have an x outside of it, so definitely x will be your least common denominator. So will be x minus 3. Now, the second term doesn't have an x plus 3, so what your least common denominator is going to be is x times x minus 3 times x plus 3. So what we have to do here, convert these two denominators into the least common denominator. First one, you have x plus 3 times x minus 3. You just need to multiply by x. You'll have to do that to the numerator also. Take your x times x minus 11, multiply that by x. You'll have a denominator now of x times x plus 3 times x minus 3 minus Now, you need to take your x times x minus 3, multiply that by x plus 3. So you'll take your x minus 7, multiply that times x plus 3 also. You'll end up getting x times x plus 3 times x minus 3. Alright, now that we have the same denominator, we can go ahead and do the math here. First one, the numerator, x times x, well that's x squared, minus x times 11, that's minus 11x, minus we have, let's forget about the negative sign for a minute, x times x, that's x squared, then x plus 3x, that's going to be x times positive 3x, that's plus 3x. Then negative 7 times x, that's negative 4x, that's negative 7x rather. Then negative 7 times positive 3, that's negative 21. You'll end up having that all over x times x plus 3 times x minus 3. Well, let's go ahead and do the math here. X squared minus x squared, the x squared's gone. We don't have a quadratic term anymore. Now we have negative 11x minus 3x, which is negative 14x, plus 7x, so that's negative 7x. Then we have a minus 21, that's actually plus 21. All over x times x plus 3 times x minus 3. Can this factor any further? Why, yes it can. I'll tell you how. That negative 7x and 21, you can factor out a negative 7. So let's go ahead and do that. If you take negative 7, factor that out in the numerator, you'll end up getting x minus 3. You distribute the negative 7, you get negative 7x plus 21. So you have negative 7 times x minus 3 over x times x plus 3 times x minus 3. Well, your x minus 3's will go bye-bye. What you should be left now with is negative 7 over x times x plus 3. And that would be your answer. That doesn't factor any further, is negative 7 over x times x plus 3. See if we could do a couple more here. Alright, what do we got here? C minus 2 all over c squared plus c minus 2 minus, we got c plus 2 all over c squared minus 3c plus 2. Alright, so we got c minus 2 over c squared plus c minus 2 minus c plus 2 all over c squared minus 3c plus 2. First thing I would do, go ahead factor your denominators. So you'll have c minus 2 all over the factorization of c squared plus c minus 2. Well, that'd be c plus 2 times c minus 1. That would be your factorization of that. Minus, you have your c plus 2 all over your factorization of c squared minus 3c plus 2. Factorization of c squared minus 3c plus 2 is c minus 2 times c minus 1. Alright, well, we have two different denominators. The only term they have in common is c minus 1. So that's going to be part of your least common denominator right away, is c minus 1. Then you have a c plus 2 and a c minus 2. So your least common denominator is going to be c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2. Now, we need to go ahead, convert the first denominator into that common denominator. We got to multiply by c minus 2. So you're going to take your numerator of c minus 2, multiply that by c minus 2, and then you'll have your common denominator of c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2 minus, now you need to take your second denominator of c minus 2 and c minus 1, multiply that by c plus 2, so you'd have c plus 2 times c plus 2 all over the quantity of c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2. Well, now we have the same common denominators. We can go ahead and actually do the math here. Alright, so let's see. The first one, you would get c squared minus 4c plus 4 all over that c minus 1 times c plus 2 times the c minus 2 minus, alright, so you get c squared plus 4c plus 4 all over, you would get c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2. Still have the same denominator, so we can go ahead and do the math. If you do it, you get c squared minus c squared. C squareds are gone, no quadratic left. But you'll end up having negative 4c minus 4c. That'll give you negative 8c. And then you have 4 minus 4, that's 0. So you literally, your numerator is negative 8c all over c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2. And this doesn't factor any further, so your answer should be negative 8c over the quantity of c minus 1 times c plus 2 times c minus 2. And really, that's it. So next lesson, we're going to kind of continue in this footstep of adding and subtracting fractions, but we're going to have some mixed expressions for this. So I hope everyone has a good night. Take care.